Hey everyone, Mr. Drake here. Today's video is about how a bill becomes a law, which is a very complicated, convoluted procedure in the U.S. Congress. And in class, if you're one of my students, we'll be going into a lot more detail about the process of a bill becoming a law. This video is intended to give you just a very brief overview of the process of a bill actually making its way through Congress and in some cases becoming an actual law. Obviously, the first step in the process is the bill being introduced into Congress. Bills can be introduced in either house, the House of Representatives or the Senate. One big exception is that any bill dealing with revenue, that being taxes, has to originate in the House of Representatives. Anyone, any average everyday citizen can suggest a bill, but in order for a bill to be considered before Congress, it has to actually be sponsored by a member of Congress. So a member of the congressman's staff will typically type up the bill. The congressman will look over it, get approval to submit it from the party leaders or whatever, and then they will place it in the hopper, which is a box in their respective chamber of Congress where all potential bills are placed when they're ready to be considered. So what the clerk of the House of Representatives or the clerk of the Senate will do is they'll take out the bill, they'll read the bill before the full chamber. It'll be given a number, House Bill 384, Senate Bill 284, whatever. And at that point, it's ready to move on to the next step, which is committee action. Bills are placed into committee depending on the topic of the bill. If the bill has to do with agriculture, the bill will be put into the Agriculture Committee of the House of Representatives. And then from there, it might even be assigned to a subcommittee where it can be studied even further. Anyway, in committee, bills are studied. They bring in experts on the topic of the bill. They debate it, and in many cases, they make changes to the bill, which is called markup. And they don't actually change the text of the bill, but they will propose and in many cases pass amendments to the bill to change certain things or to make something better or even to just make the wording clearer. If a bill doesn't get a favorable vote in committee, it is pretty much dead at that point and doesn't go any further. But if the bill gets a favorable vote, whether it's with or without amendments, it will move on to the next step. And that next step is the bill going to the full chamber in which it originated, the House or the Senate, for debate before the entire body. When the bill comes before this first chamber, the full chamber will debate the bill and can also propose amendments to the bill. The amendments are not just limited to committee. Amendments can be passed by members of Congress who weren't part of that committee as well. Now, the way this debate goes depends on the chamber you're in. If you're in the House of Representatives, there's a rules committee that sets a time limit on debate and says, okay, well, after that time is up, we'll vote on the bill. The Senate doesn't have such a limit, which is why the Senate is able to have filibusters and cloture has to be passed in order to stop debate on a bill and actually come to a vote. Now, if it doesn't get a passing vote in that first chamber that it's in, it can be sent back to committee, or at that point, in many cases, the bill just sort of peters out. But if the bill is passed favorably by the full House or the full Senate, it moves on to the next step. And the next step is just like all the other previous steps we've been over. The exact same process repeats in the other chamber. So if the bill started in the House, they do this whole rigmarole again in the Senate, and vice versa. If changes are made by the second chamber, there has to be what's called a conference committee of both houses that come together and actually hammer out the differences in the two bills, the House version of the bill and the Senate version of the bill. And then both chambers have to fully agree to the resolved version of the bill. So if a bill is passed in the House, but then it passes in the Senate with changes, the conference committee gets together, hammers out the differences, and then the full House and the full Senate have to pass that revised bill. If that happens, the bill goes to the president. The president can sign the bill, and it becomes law immediately. The president can also not sign the bill in a 10-day window. And if the president doesn't sign the bill, one of two things can happen. If Congress is in session, the bill will just become a law without the president signing it. If Congress has adjourned in that intervening 10 days, the bill is dead. The president can also just veto the bill and say he's not going to sign it, and at that time he has to send it back to Congress for further consideration, at which time it usually goes back into committee and the process sort of restarts, and at that point it's kind of highly unlikely that the bill is going to become a law unless Congress passes it with a two-thirds majority to override the veto. That's all for today. We'll be doing a lot more with this in class, as I said before, if you're one of my students. So make sure you reference this video for the very basics on how a bill becomes a law, but we'll be talking in a lot more detail as we move forward in our unit. As always, feel free to ask if you have any questions. Cheers.